In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was... Hello. That's all from the Bible for tonight, although we might have a little bit of Leviticus later on. We'll see how it goes. Oh. OK. Well, most of the time I was at school, I learned absolutely nothing. And I can still remember most of it. That's the thing about education. Nobody can take it away from you. I can still remember when I started school, because we couldn't afford a uniform, but Mam managed to borrow an old one from someone in our street. So, my first day at school, I went to school dressed as an air raid warden from World War II. Yeah, it did stand out a bit. So, on my second day, I wore the gas mask so they wouldn't know it was me. But somehow they knew, yeah. Because if you didn't look like everybody else, people could be very unkind. There was one boy who always wore his Wellingtons to school, so everybody called him Kid Welly. We laughed. But we stopped laughing because his actual name was Gary Price. Yeah, and what Gary Price did, every time someone called him Kid Welly, he'd punch them and say, I'm not wearing Wellingtons, am I? And he'd keep doing that until they agreed with him. And then he'd say, it's Siadwel who wears Wellingtons every day to school, isn't it? Even though I didn't. I didn't even have a pair of Wellingtons. Shoes I had, although I could only wear one shoe at a time to save wear and tear. But the thing is, what Gary Price was doing, it worked. And they stopped calling him Kid Welly and started calling me Siadwelly. And Siadwellington. So I told Miss, and she said, you don't understand what's going on, do you, Siadwel? And I said, yes, miss, I don't. And she said, Siadwel, you're a scapegoat. A scapegoat. And then I had to say, please, miss, what is a scapegoat? And she said, Siadwel, you can look it up. It's in the Bible. Leviticus. Yes! Anyway, when I learned to read about 20 years later, I did look it up. And a scapegoat is a goat who's had everybody's sins put on him. And then he's sent out into the wilderness. Although, why anybody would want to send a goat to Rill, I don't know. But Leviticus is very interesting. He's really, really helpful on things like food. For example, don't eat eagles, weasels, or ferrets. I follow that advice. And there's some excellent advice on fruit, which I read for you now. Here we are. It's chapter 19, verse 23. And when ye shall come into the land, and shall have planted all manner of trees for food, ye shall count the fruit thereof as uncircumcised to you. It shall not be eaten thereof. First of all, I thought that was a bit mad. What's Leviticus on about with uncircumcised fruit that can't be eaten? You know, and then I got it. Of course, don't eat unpeeled bananas. So when Nan makes bananas and custard, that's why it's so nice. She peels the bananas. Oh, good old Leviticus. Anyway, I was telling you about Gary Price at school. And you know how boys sometimes wipe their nose on their sleeve or their jumper? Gary Price didn't do that. What Gary Price did was he used to wipe his nose on the sleeve of my jumper. He called me the human hanky. By the end of term, my jumper sleeve was so stiff, I couldn't bend my arm. When he sneezed, he trained himself to say, Siadwel. I did think of changing my name, but I couldn't think of another one, so there we are. Another thing Gary Price did, he killed a bumblebee. Imagine, I killed a bumblebee. How could anyone do that? By being Gary Price, that's how. I was so sad. Yeah, I wrote a poem about it. It is. I've called the poem, Gary Price is a very difficult person to avoid, but it's always worth making the effort. Yeah. Anyway, that's the title. Here's the poem. I know he's really bad because he turned a bee into a was. He hates the way they fly and hum, and so it had to die and come to rest in the arms of sweet bee Jesus.